and that's Sanford Hall back before there was a park there. Sanford Hall, well, that isn't even today. That's a few years ago. It's much nicer than that today. Then the Alabama Polytechnic Institute started the DVM course in 1907, 3-year course after a 1-year course of pre-veterinary medicine. Today it's pretty hard to get in without a degree, and I'll show you what those qualifications are in a little bit. We all know Toomer's Corner. We still see the trees there. I don't think they've grown any, and we know why, and that's Toomer's today. This is the first class in veterinary medicine. Dr. Carey, again, had his hat there. As you notice, all of the students were very formally attired and had ties and hats and so forth. And that tradition is carried on even today. We're one of the few veterinary colleges that still have a dress code with our students, and it's self-run, self-monitored, self-imposed. I thought that was Dr. Carey. Jack Sims says he thinks it's Dr. McAdory, but it was interesting. Dr. Carey had the first car in Auburn, and he was always kind of put it in 4th gear and ran, wide open. And of course, they don't start rolling very well in 4th gear. They kind of jump and bump and so forth. And story is Dr. McAdory tried to tell him you got to let the clutch out and push in on the gas and so forth. And he said, "Don't tell me how to drive my car." And after that, as the story goes, Dr. McAdory could drive his horse and buggy, but he couldn't drive his car. And they were big friends throughout life, of course. This is the first College of Veterinary Medicine. It sits right where Ramsey Hall is today. And as we know, the Sanford Hall was right up here, and then just kind of down the hill was Veterinary College. Out here is Vet Hill, which was at one time a part of the Carey farm. As I understood, it was somewhere around 2,000 acres in the Carey farm in that part of Auburn, and we still have that area today. That's good bit of it is part of the university. A good bit of it is residential today. You see the windmill, so they were conservative. No heating or air conditioning. This is the first lab, and the pot-bellied stove was heating. The windows open were the air conditioning. But that was a modern idea. As Dr. Vaughan said, the germ theory was not totally accepted in human medicine or veterinary medicine at that time, but through Dr. Carey's teaching, we started as a scientific college of veterinary medicine from the very beginning. Some of the early students with anatomical specimen. Veterinary Medical Association in the college. This is the college up here. This is Dr. Carey. These are the veterinarians and students in the college, and this was taken around 1911. Oh, yes. The students that we see here, and I haven't identified, but B.T. Sims is in here, Jack Sims' father. Dr. Wolf was on faculty later on, and there were a number of people that were very prominent in the college and in veterinary medicine in the state later on. Do you see your father?
Yeah, my father's in the second row, I think. Second row, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
V.H. Moon is Joe's uncle.
Ah.
Very young. And he's
this is something that Dr. Carey started early on, and it was on Saturdays. They would take animals from Macon County, Lee County, all the rural areas, and bring them to the veterinary college. And of course, the students, and you can tell them here, they have their ROTC uniforms on. The students would get to do the work on the animals, supervised by the faculty, which was mostly Dr. Carey and Dr. McAdory, but they supervise work on the animals and so forth. And as you can see, they used a series of harnesses and ropes and so forth, because the anesthesia at that time was, in humans also, was not very reliable. So veterinarians usually bound the animals with leather straps and ropes and so forth to do surgical procedures that they did at that time. And they were very limited, mostly castrations and wounds and various things like that. They didn't do much abdominal surgery. They did some umbilical surgeries and so forth, which was fairly common. But these Saturdays at the College of Veterinary Medicine became very popular. As I said, Dr. Carey and Dr. Petrie were fantastic into outreach. And they'd actually bring in watermelons and peaches and various things like that, ice cream at one time, as I understand, to the farmers and feed them and then take care of their livestock. And of course, they didn't have teaching hospitals, so that was their way of getting their students hands-on and being able to deal with animals before they went out into practice. You can see the little boys standing around watching, and of course, I'm sure later on they were in veterinary school themselves, but it was just a real occurrence, and these got more popular and more popular as the years went on. Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims was one of our most prestigious graduates. Dr. Vaughan mentioned the old Bureau of Animal Industry, and Dr. Sims was the director of that at one time, which preceded the today USDA, and very significant in the whole international scene on veterinary medicine. And then this is the Serum Lab, and this was built up on Vet Hill, and it was part of the movement from behind Sanford Hall. And we think that probably why they moved the veterinary college from behind Sanford Hall kind of out in the country on Vet Hill was because of the students' proclivity for taking their anatomical specimens outside the building and working on the lawn behind Sanford Hall. So they were real interested in moving them out. Hog cholera was a tremendous problem with the swine in the state, and Alabama was one of the leaders in swine production in the entire country. They had tons of peanuts to feed the hogs, so they were a big part of the industry. So the hog cholera serum to prevent cholera in swine was produced at this plant, and This is the current location for the School of Pharmacy. This is the junior veterinary medicine. This is the student AVMA that Dr. Vaughan alluded to, that Dr. Carey started. You notice Dr. Carey has a cane here, and the story there, and I got it from Miss Fran, so I know it's true, that he was doing some construction, and he worked constantly. He would get up in the morning and go out on his farm and tour his farm and get the work started and everything, come back, catch the train, go to Montgomery, work there as state veterinarian, come back in the evening. His male student secretary would meet him and tell him what needed to be done and so forth, and he'd work there and then retire to his library and do his studying and so forth, and before retiring. And he built the storage shed right behind the house today on College Drive. He built the wall back there and so forth. Story is that he was on the house doing some construction one day, and one of the laborers had done something dumb, and Dr. Carey got angry, and they were having a discussion, and Dr. Carey fell off the house and broke his leg. And they said, oh, let's get him to the doctor. And I think Dr. Thomas was the human counterpart of the veterinarian in Auburn at that time. And he said, no, get me Dr. McAdory. So Dr. McAdory set his leg for him, and he let's see, this is Dr. McAdory.
Would that be so at the very top, far left, far right, round face?
I'm not sure which one of those. Tom and I looked at these, and we weren't real sure which one of those was Sugg. We knew Dr. Reinhardt. He came back here several years ago. Dr. Seibald taught Dr. Vaughan and I both pathology, but we haven't identified everybody in the picture. Some of the things that Dr. Carey did, of course, is started all these things, and again, the milk and meat sanitation laws. As state veterinarian, he was able to get a lot of these things done politically, because they wanted him to be the state veterinarian a lot more than he wanted to do it. They had to have dip pits throughout the state to run their cattle through to kill the tick that carried the cattle tick fever. And what was so insidious about that is that the tick fever didn't kill the cow, just made them unproductive. They'd just waste away. And it was real difficult then. They didn't gain weight, so they didn't make money, and they didn't do very well. And then when they found out what caused the disease, and Dr. Carey had these pits as state veterinarian dug all over the state, and they'd run the cattle through it. And of course, just like today, people didn't.
Is that why, I'm from over in the Black Belt, is that why a lot of those farms over there were dip pits?
Yes, dip pits. That's exactly. Some of them were concrete, some of them were just plain dirt, but they used arsenic to kill the ticks, and of course every once in a while it would cause the demise of a cow, and so the farmers resisted it tremendously, but through Dr. Carey's power of persuasion and various enthusiastic things that he did, he was able to get them to dip the cattle and get rid of Texas tick fever. And as Dr. Vaughan said, also the tuberculosis at the turn of the century killed more people than all the cancers put together today. And if you think about that is just absolutely horrible. And the primary thing was milk, and everybody had a cow in the backyard, and they drank unpasteurized milk. And it's interesting, we're having that same discussion today. He founded the Alabama Veterinary Medical Association, was instrumental in the national AVMA, and was president of the National AVMA. He was also the executive secretary of the national organization for, 12 years or so. He was just a dynamo of activity. I just, no one can understand how much energy he had. This is the old football field, and these were, the veterinary college was built up in this area, and I think Harvey, you said that old Bullard Field is where they played polo. So they had a polo team. Some of the professors and some of the students at the veterinary college played polo. This is Dr. Petrie here, Dr. Carey over here, Mrs. Glenn, and we're not real sure on these. These were part of the administration group. Here, we're going to have to identify those, Jack. You probably have a good fix on those. Dr. McAdory played football for Auburn, did undergraduate work here. Dr. Carey encouraged him to go to McKillop in Chicago, which was a private veterinary college, and get his degree so he could come back and help him start the College of Veterinary Medicine, the DVM degree program. Dr. McAdory loved to teach, and he was only dean for 5 years, 35 to 40, and those that knew him said the reason that he didn't like the administration, he liked to be teaching. And here he is teaching in the amphitheater in Carey Hall. That's gone today. They filled that in and made it a classroom. And but this was a European-style amphitheater, and they would demonstrate various things here with cattle and horses. And the students, you can see they're wide awake and learning the latest things of the day. Carey Hall was built dedicated in 1940. It was built by the WPA. It was built as a laboratory, and it's been renovated. But we did a historic marker for it a couple of years ago, and it's a very historic building. But again, this is where the veterinary college was moved to from up behind Sanford Hall, and I'll show you that in just a second. Dr. Sugg was the third dean. He served from 1940 with a hiatus in World War II, and then came back and actually died in office in 1958. And he and his son were very close, and Redding Sugg was here a few years ago, and we toured the new college, and he said that he and his dad used to walk the Foster Farm, which is where the college is today on Wire Road. It was about 350 acres, and he said that they used to walk that farm, and his daddy telling him, we're going to build a new college here, and so forth. So Redding Sugg Jr. then was able to see the fruits of what he and his daddy did when he was a little bitty boy. So that was a wonderful story. Dr. Sugg came from North Carolina, and we were trying to find out if the shrimp came from his size or his proclivity for the crustaceans, but probably his size. This is the faculty and staff of the College of Veterinary Medicine around 1940, and Dr. Sugg here, and Dr. McAdory, Dr. Jimmy Greene here, Dr. Sims there.
He's up, no, over the top, right there.
Okay. Is that his brother?
I don't know that. Is it?
They really favor. We thought that was who that was. This is Dr. Winters, and I don't even know his first name. Everybody call him Scruffy. Everett. Yeah, okay. But his nickname was Scruffy, and he was dean. He was dean the whole time. Dr. Sugg was in the military, which was 3 or better years, and he was dean of the college, and rarely gets any credit on that. But the students that I talked to that knew him just loved him. They thought he was just really an outstanding teacher and individual. But this was taken out in front of Carey Hall, and that was the entire faculty. This is, of course, Dr. Sugg and Dr. Duncan, who was president of the university at that time, and they were rigged up for some celebration. No telling. This is, you might know her, Dr. Marie Adelberger. She was the second woman to graduate from the College of Veterinary Medicine. Anelda Betts, she and Marie argue over which one was second and which one was third. Anelda, she was named, they've both been named distinguished alumni from the college. Anelda was from San Antonio, Texas. Her family moved here for her to go to veterinary college. She couldn't go to A&M, Texas A&M, because she was a woman. They didn't take women. And so she couldn't go to veterinary college there. So she called around and she talked with Dr. Sugg, and he said, yeah, you come on over and you can go to school here, you know, if your grades are good and all that. Well, her father brought the whole family over here. He got a job. He was a CPA, and he got a job over here so that his daughter could go to veterinary school. And as soon as she graduated, they moved back to San Antonio. And I've got about an hour or so interviewing her on videotape as what it was like to be, you know, the only woman in veterinary school at the time that she graduated. But that was. Huh? Yes. Marie lives, you know, just out of town, and still has dogs, and still as feisty as ever. She taught Dr. Baker and Harvey and Tom and I microbiology. This was the administration. Wilfred Bailey, Carl Clark, Dr. Sugg, Dr. Greene, Dr. Leibold, Dr. Fitzgerald, and I'm not really sure. Oh, Mr. Wingate was Dean Sugg's right-hand man. Yeah. And she was secretary. That was the admissions committee right there. When I came to veterinary college, the mayor of my hometown was Bill Dura, and he was a veterinarian, and he operated a dairy and did mayoring on the side. And I got him to write a letter for me when I was coming to school, and he wrote Dean Suggs. He was classmate of Dean Suggs, and he said, this letter is to support, my nickname was Pete. This is support Pete Beard. He's a good boy. He's from a good family. If you don't let him in, I'm going to come down there and kick your tail. And that was my letter. I said, oh my gosh, I'll never get in. But as Dr. Vaughan said, this is the Mason-Dixon line that goes somewhere, where, Tom? This area?
Right under Pennsylvania.
Yeah, right under Pennsylvania. This is the, everything below here was, Auburn was the only veterinary college at the time. Auburn started in the veterinary school in 1907. Tuskegee started in 1947. The other schools were later. You can see the abbreviation over here on the ones in which in the late 60s, due to the Hill, Senator Lister Hill from Alabama, and Burton, the Hill-Burton Act, they were able to get money to construct medical schools, dental schools, and veterinary schools. And so there were a host, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida all built veterinary colleges. Prior to that, they all came to Auburn. At one time, there were 10 different states that were sending students to Auburn, and there was a period there we've gotten a lot of students from Cuba and Puerto Rico, and there were quite a few students from out of country that came to Auburn. The SREB was a brainchild, as Dr. Vaughan said, of Dr. Sugg, and that allowed students to come to Auburn. They were charging tuition by that time, and students to come to Auburn from out of state, and their state, due to the SREB program, paid their out-of-state tuition, and the students only paid the same tuition as the Alabama graduates. Right. Dr. Baker came from Florida, came in on the Florida quota. And we still have a contract with Kentucky, and it's been going on for over 55 years. This is the old incinerator, and this was a area that they would take the dead animals and process them, so it was a abattoir. This is the modern lameness arena, and this was donated by an alumnus, Dr. Woody Bartlett from Montgomery. This is the anatomy physiology part building, still there. The anatomy lab, football stadium back here. A lot of students from main campus came out here and took physiology, and Trudy Baker did. And what was your?
It's called Indian Textiles, but we were required to go and 83 classes under Maria.
Yeah, and so again, when we dedicated Carey Hall, we had a lot of people come and tell us that they had come here, in another curriculum. Carey Hall, we had animals just right across the street. The large animal teaching barn was right over here. The paddock's right over here. When Dean Greene announced to the administration and student leadership one day that we were going to move out to Wire Road, one of the administrators said, how are we going to get out there? How are the students going to get out there? And Dean Greene went over to the window and pulled the blinds up and said, look out there at all those cars. And that was how he said they were going to get there, and they did. build it and they will come. And Wire Road at that time was so far out in the country. Small animal clinic, built in 1950, dedicated in 1950. This was the first building on the Auburn University campus to be air conditioned. And it was because of Mr. Scott, who was one of the founders of Scott Ritchie. Mr. Scott didn't want his bird dogs to be in this hot building. These windows here were the treatment rooms, and this was west. So they really got hot in the afternoon. So he asked Dr. Horline how much would it cost to air condition this building. He said, I don't know. And he said, find out. And he did, and he wrote a check for it. The second building that got air conditioned was President's office. This is my idea, and I think Dr. Vaughan shares it, but this is why they moved veterinary college out to Vet Hill. Students would do their anatomy dissections on these carts, and instead of being in the building where there was no air conditioning, you know, it was just hot as it could be, they'd get out under the trees or out on the lawn or somewhere. And this is anatomical specimens were preserved with formaldehyde. So the sights and the odors and so forth, I think, is what drove us out to Vet Hill and allowed us to do that. I can't tell you how many times I saw young Tom, we called him Tuskegee Tom, castrated a horse on the front lawn of the veterinary college there at Carey Hall, and of course students even in those days were all around. You all remember the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and how the Notre Dame football field team at that time with Rodney and so forth had the Four Horsemen, and Auburn parodied that with their Four Horsemen, and this is part of the polo team. Look how it's grown. This is the College of Veterinary Medicine circa 1957. Dr. Sugg passed away in 58, so it had to be in that time. Hugh Williams, his son, is still here and an artist of note. H. Morgan, Tuskegee Tom. This is Dr. Kiesel, George Kiesel. Dr. Kiesel was on the faculty. He was a student of Dr. Gibbons from Cornell and came here in the late 40s. He was the first one hired at the College of Veterinary Medicine that did primarily research. He did research and clinical medicine, but research was his real love, and he did food animal reproduction and research. He bought this property that we're on right here as a farm, and in later years moved his mother and father from New York here and took care of them until they passed away, and then he passed away later, and no one knew apparently, but he left this land here to the city of Auburn for the purposes that they're using it for today. And Becky, y'all done a marvelous job in utilizing that legacy from Dr. Kiesel.
Tommy Weatherford is in the second row.
Yeah. Tommy Weatherford went to dental school.
That's right.
At UAB. Yeah. Evans. We know most of these people. Dr. Heath was my veterinarian when I was growing up in Leeds, and he retired, and he was my instructor when I went through veterinary school in small animal medicine, Dr. Greene up here, Dr. Warline, Fred Shell. No, this isn't Bobby. Looks like him, doesn't it? Colquitt, isn't that who that is, Tom?
Sure.
Yeah. Of course, Dr. Bailey.
Is that Wilbur Pugh back on the back?
Yes, it is. This is Wilbur Pugh. Dillard, and Dr. Warline.
Charlie Roberts,
Uh,
by Bill Baker, right above Fred Shell.
okay, yeah. Charlie Roberts. The Roberts lab was named for him. But this was the faculty and staff of the College of Veterinary Medicine in 1957. So not very big. Still, this was Dr. Kiesel's lab. And this, you can see about where it is. It was behind the small animal clinic. It's a big parking lot back there now. The stadium's right behind it over there. These trees, that's all gone now, and that lab's gone. But that was his first lab.
It's a nice lecture building with those outside doors for infectious diseases.
Yes, and that was his love was research. This was after Dean Sugg passed away. They had a group kind of running the college, Dr. Fitzgerald, Dr. Clark, Dr. Leibold, Dr. Bailey, and Dr. Greene. And then they named Dr. Greene the fourth dean shortly after this. And Dr. Greene graduated from Auburn, and he served in the military, was a fantastic politician, and did a wonderful job in bringing the veterinary college forward. He served from 1958 to 1977, and then one of his students succeeded him. McAdory Hall, it's still there today. We've moved the large animal operation to the large animal teaching hospital, named appropriately after the sixth dean, John Thomas Vaughan. This is the Sugg lab. It's out behind the College of Veterinary Medicine, and it was built at about the time that McAdory opened, shortly after. And this is one of my favorite pictures, the bowler hat on the horse skeleton. The story on the bowler hat is that veterinary profession was trying to emerge from a morass of just people following in the footsteps of a veterinarian and learning the trade. And they did that with medicine and dentistry and most every other cabinet making and most every other profession. And we were becoming more scientific and so forth. And then the mark of a gentleman or a learned person in England, and it came on over to this country, of course, was the bowler hat. And Dr. Carey was rarely seen without his bowler hat. So this was his students kind of poking at him with that hat. I've seen another picture. It's in Jack Sims' book of a horse in a parade on College Drive on the back of a wagon, and it's a horse skeleton, and it's got a bowler hat on. That's in your book. This is a picture of the College of Veterinary Medicine, McAdory Hall, Wire Road, before Shug Jordan, the loop. This road here is Sims Drive, BT Sims, and back here is the SUG lab. This is the Raptor Center where it is today, but this is McAdory with the barns and so forth. That was the first building that they built out here on Wire Road, and then later on built Greene Hall, and then later on Horline, which is a small animal clinic, and so forth, and we'll show that. Again, this is McAdory, this is Horline, this is Greene Hall Annex, and this is Sims Drive, going back to the SUG lab. This is the H.C. Morgan Drive. This is the USDA fish parasite lab. This is the forensic lab across the street. They're building a new forensic lab right down in this area, and the Turnham building is right in this area today. You notice the racetrack, the full oval back here, and that was done by a Mr. Hardaway who had horses, and they exercised horses back here. And we were doing, when Dr. Vaughan was the head of large animal and the equine specialist for the whole region, there were tons of horses referred in here to him, and they had to check those out. And this is the most famous. This is Greene Hall, and you've seen that. This is a horse named Bold Ruler. If you ever keep up with the Derby and horse racing and so forth, even today, this horse sired more. His offspring have made more money than any other sire ever. One of his offspring was Secretariat, and you got to see that movie. It's just absolutely fantastic. You can see here that he's lost weight. He's fairly mature. He was getting, even at that time, $250,000 on stud fees, and he was had a throat cancer, and he had been taken to Ohio State University, and had surgery, and it came back pretty quick. So Auburn was noted even at that time for radiation therapy, and we had a cobalt radiation center up where the mound is, up by the old athletic dorm. And so they sent Bo Ruler down here and treated him for several weeks. And just as in people, they do the radiation 3 times a week. And over a period of weeks, the only thing is that they've got to sedate the horse or the dog to treat them, because they're not going to lie there on the table and be still. So what they had to do is they had to sedate him, put him on a truck, bring him over to the cobalt therapy, and then treat him. And the treatment ran exposure to the cobalt machine at that time was about 15 minutes. So they were really under there for a pretty good while. This is Dr. Fred Shell, head of the equine section. Jan Bartles, head of radiology at that time. If you notice this trailer, this is the handler for the horse, Bold Ruler, and has this little trailer here right by the barn. Bold Ruler's stall is just on the other side of the trailer. Dr. Greene supervised cutting a hole in the barn so that when the handler would go out of his little trailer there, he had to go through the stall to see Bo Ruler, both coming and going. So it was kind of mandatory that he see Bo Ruler. One of our graduates, Susan Hayward, you didn't know she was a veterinarian. It wasn't her, it was her son. Greg Barker. Susan Hayward married Lex Barker, who was Tarzan back in the old days. And she had twin sons, and Greg and his brother. Greg graduated from veterinary college, and so we have famous people come through from time to time. This famous person became the 6th dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine, and ended up teaching at the college and castrating horses on the front lawn and other things. Horline Hall was appropriately named for Dr. Horline, who was a fantastic individual. This is the Goodwin Overton building, and these two families donated money for various things at the college, and they put some of their donations together during Dr. Vaughan's tenure and built a gorgeous building. It's a student union building for veterinary medicine, and a beautiful auditorium where we can seat our entire student body and faculty at the same time. Diagnostic imaging, this is where the cancer treatment takes place today, and radiology and ultrasound, CAT scan. This is the MRI and ultrasound, and this was when they were building the linear accelerator. It had to be a solid pour so that there were no cracks in it, and they poured this all in one setting, if you will. They had trucks lined up there for hours pouring out concrete, and that's the linear accelerator lab. This is the student procedures lab. This is where you learn to pace tracheas and give IVs and various things like that. And this is the Greene Hall Annex. This was our first computer lab here, this double-wide trailer, and that was done during a time they weren't having any trailers on any of the education property. It was the computer lab. We weren't allowed to call it a double wide. This is the Goodwin stallion barn reproduction. This is the mare barn, and this is another mare facility, Bartlett Lane. And this is the present dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine, Timothy Businger. And this is appropriately a war dog memorial. We have a little park outside Greene Hall. And this was tribute to the war dogs and to all of our faculty and students that took place in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and even today in Auburn. People, and especially the College of Veterinary Medicine, have been involved in those things. I'll just let you see this real quickly. These are a couple of our recent graduates that are, Jason is actually on faculty. Brad Fields is a recent graduate, and they're in Afghanistan right now. And this is the Auburn flag is in Afghanistan. Various things that you know. This is a state diagnostic lab that's built on the back of the property just behind the, out near the SUG lab. And we're involved in the Department of Defense training, preparedness programs and so forth. These are way our students are conglomerated right now. 40 from Alabama. We still get, we've approved 40 for Kentucky, but right now it's 38. Some from West Virginia, and then at large. So we're increasing our class size from 100 to 120 for needs. And Dr. Vaughan told you what the qualifications early on for getting into school, and now they're a little bit different. You just about have to have a degree. Carrie Francis understands that completely, and you'll have to meet Carrie Francis when we adjourn here. She's Dr. Carey's great-granddaughter. She's from Virginia and chose to come to Auburn, and she'll have to compete on the out-of-state group, which is about 600 others for those 20 spots. But she'll do it. She'll do it. The experience with animals and so forth, you know all that, and what you go through. This is the building that was named after young Tom, and he's did pretty well for veterinary medicine. This is equine surgery. You can see the horse under here somewhere. And this is the reproduction barn. We have a full-blown dairy right next door to it, and a cattle barn for reproduction and so forth, and then 2 equine barns. And we have other species here that we take care of, and the students are exposed to all of these things. This is present day College of Veterinary Medicine. It's grown tremendously and continues to grow.
The title of this address is A Brief History of Veterinary Medicine at Auburn University. In this age of do-it-yourselfism, the practice of medicine, law, the ministry, and farming seem to be irresistible to the amateur. In close competition is the interpretation of history. I hasten to disabuse you at the outset of any notion that I conceive of myself as an historian. That is a learned profession in the likes of David McCullough and Doris Kearns Goodwin of Shelby Foote, and of course our own Wayne Flint. My only qualification for such presumption as this is that by happenstance and a time warp, I have been witness and participant of the scene for 4 generations, and through the eyes of my grandmother since the mid-19th century. Erin Iola Hardin, who lived with us intermittently until her death in 1944, was born in Auburn in 1855, and related memories of Rousseau's and Wilson's raids in 1864 and 1865, and of the privations of the Reconstruction. She was well acquainted with the faculty of both the East Alabama Male College and the Female College in Tuskegee, reportedly tutored some of the early Samfords, and addressed President Thatch as Charlie. My father, Henry Asa Vaughan, was born on a farm in Marengo County near Demopolis in 1892, the year Dr. Carey was recruited by President Brune. He dated Dean McAdory's daughter, Freddie, was a schoolmate of Dean Suggs and Dr. Marvin Williams, and worked as a county agent in Dean Carey's tick eradication program. Whether in the best of times or the worst of times, to borrow a phrase from Mr. Dickens, man's most ambitious undertakings oft seem destined for launch, irrespective of winds or tides. No better example exists than the founding of the State Agricultural and Mechanical College of Alabama in 1872. It was during the darkest days of that post-war period, euphemistically termed the Reconstruction. A more inauspicious time and place can scarcely be imagined. By comparison, the Great Depression was a cakewalk. Full appreciation of the significance of the establishment of formal veterinary medical education in a deep South state during the last decade of the 19th century is possible only with an understanding of the history of the region overlaid on daunting factors that challenged such an undertaking. chronicling such a history must reach back in time to include ancient truths that are so often forgotten or neglected in the haste to deal with the present. Even today, attention is being focused on what many consider to be a current concept of one medicine, the convergence of the healing arts of human and animal medicine to their mutual benefit. In point of fact, one medicine predates history of man's earliest efforts to avoid or repair the effects of injury and disease to both himself and the animals on which he rapidly became dependent for his survival as soon as their domestication commenced over 10,000 years before Christ. The history of veterinary medicine and its relationship to human medicine starts with the evolution of life forms and the emergence of animal cultures, progressing into early medicine as practiced in the cradles of civilization. Fast forward 4 millennia through the Assyrian and Babylonian empires and ancient Egypt, the Golden Age of Greece, and the rise and fall of the Western Roman Empire, Byzantium and the Dark Ages, the Renaissance and the Enlightenment to the 18th century. The emergence of European schools of veterinary medicine in the 18th century fueled the rapid advances of medicine in the 19th century, climaxed by the establishment of formal veterinary education in North America in 1862. That these dates concurred with events that were taking place in Alabama is less a coincidence than the culmination of the southward expansion of the American frontier after the War of 1812. Into this cavalcade of civilization in the first half of the 19th century, the boundaries of a new nation pushed westward and forward, westward and southward, reaching in its course the Chattahoochee River, opening up fertile new ground in Alabama. In 1836, shortly after the Treaty of Washington in 1832 that removed the Creek Indians from East Alabama, the town of Auburn was founded by James J. Harper from Georgia. Growth in the town paralleled that of the territory, soon requiring efforts to meet the needs of education. Early preparatory schools that served a wide area of East Alabama and West Georgia were the forerunners of the East Alabama Male College, founded by the Methodist Church in 1856. Closed in 1861 with the declaration of Civil War, the college served as a Confederate hospital until 1865. History records that rapid advances in science and industry are often born on the wings of war. It is noteworthy that the Civil War coincided with the proof of the germ theory in the laboratories of Louis Pasteur, 1860, marking the beginnings of modern medicine and ushering in the golden age of bacteriology. Wound infections and contagious plagues had been the bête noire of civilization from the beginnings of time. Following Pasteur's momentous revelation, discovery of the true etiology of these infections followed in rapid-fire order. About the time that Charles A. Carey was graduating in veterinary medicine at Iowa State University in 1887, Robert Koch had identified the cause of tuberculosis and incorporated the findings of Theobald Smith of the U.S. Bureau of Animal Industry to test infected cattle and require compulsory pasteurization of milk products. Also of note at the time was the discovery of the pyroplasm causing Texas tick fever and its mode of transmission. In so doing, two veterinarians, Frederick Kilburn and Cooper Curtis, working under Dr. Daniel E. Salmon and Theobald Smith in the laboratories of the Bureau of Animal Industry, demonstrated for the first time the role of insect vectors of both human and animal contagion, opening the door to elucidation of the causes of malaria, yellow fever, plague, typhus, and innumerable other arthropod-borne diseases. Three other events occurring in the same time frame, 1860 to 1890, was seminal in the birth of veterinary medical education in Alabama. In 1862, a year after Lincoln was elected president, Congress passed the Homestead Act, the Morrill Land-Grant College Act, and the act establishing the United States Department of Agriculture, all aimed at assisting the family farmer. The Morrill Act, in particular, provided for agricultural and mechanical colleges throughout the country. The Methodist Church had a well-established college in Auburn with no funds to operate it. So, in 1872, the East Alabama Male College, under the administration at the time of Dr. B.B. Ross, chairman of the faculty board, and presumably with the support of Governor David P. Lewis, made a successful bid for Alabama's land-grant college, transferring ownership of the church college to the state of Alabama. The second Morrill Land-Grant College Act in 1890 provided annual appropriations to each state to support its land-grant college. It also provided funding for publicly supported black institutions, including Tuskegee Institute, which became known as the Colleges of 1890. The third major event occurred in 1887 with the passage of the Hatch Act, which provided for a yearly grant to each state for the support of an agricultural experiment station. This coincided with the administration of William Leroy Brune, president of Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical College. Up until the turn of the century, Germany and France had been the fountainheads of medical and comparative, that is, veterinary medical knowledge. It was into this exciting period of discovery in 1891 that Brune and Carey, then a University of Missouri graduate student of Dr. Paul Pagines, himself a student of Louis Pasteur, had a chance meeting on a train. President Brune, intent on emphasizing the sciences at Auburn, recognized the potential in Carey and persuaded him to join the faculty at Auburn as professor of veterinary science and physiology in the agricultural experiment station. It might be said that from this time onward, the future was virtually preordained. In satisfaction of his agreement with President Brune, Carey pursued his graduate studies further in the laboratories of Robert Koch in Germany, returning to Auburn in 1893. An immediate benefit of Carey's first-hand acquaintance with the work of Pasteur and Koch was that Alabama was one of the first states in the nation to institute the use of tuberculin for detection of tuberculosis in cattle and the application of public meat and milk inspection and the pasteurization process. This was the finest example of the practice of one medicine. Applying the findings of Kilburn and Curtis, Carey tackled the South's problems with tick fever, which had effectively paralyzed the cattle industry. But to execute these multiple responsibilities, there needed to be a formal structure to use as a base of operations. Dr. Carey extended the bounds of veterinary medicine at Auburn to statewide programs that materially affected both human and animal health. In close cooperation with the handful of graduate licensed veterinarians in the state, the early Alabama Veterinary Medical Association, this resulted in the enactment by the state legislature of laws regulating the practice of veterinary medicine, livestock sanitation, meat and milk inspection, the prevention and control of such animal diseases as tuberculosis, brucellosis, Texas tick fever, hog cholera, and rabies. So in 1907, in response to his 15 years of efforts statewide, as well as a growing number of national offices, and with the support of then-President Charles C. Thatch and Governor Braxton Bragg Comer, Carey succeeded in establishing the College of Veterinary Medicine at Alabama Polytechnic Institute. It became the 8th veterinary college in North America, 6th in the United States, tied with Colorado, and the first in the entire southern United States from coast to coast below the Mason-Dixon line, which is the southern boundary of Pennsylvania. Carey was, of course, appointed its first dean. In the same year, with the urging of President Thatch, the Alabama legislature made Carey the state veterinarian. Before the year's end, together with 11 Alabama veterinarians who were graduates of recognized approved veterinary colleges, Carey organized the Alabama Veterinary Medical Association with the purpose of establishing standards of professional ethics, education, public health, and licensure. This greatly increased public recognition of accredited veterinarians of professional colleges and sharpened the distinction between the practice of veterinary medicine by licensed graduates and the all too common laymen and farriers on whom the public had had to rely. Carey served as the association's secretary-treasurer for 28 years until his death in 1935. Covering all bases during that inaugural year, Carey also organized a student veterinary medical association. His recognition of the importance of organized veterinary medicine and his unflagging support at the national as well as the regional levels earned him the presidency of the American Veterinary Medical Association in 1920. The original veterinary department boasted a 3-story frame building with independent gas, water, and sewer system. It included classrooms, museums, and laboratories for physiology, bacteriology, pathology, and photography. Separate facilities provided housing for laboratory animals, anatomical studies, and a hospital for livestock. Paddocks and sheds had sufficient capacity for 125 cattle or other large animals, as well as isolation quarters for contagious diseases. The department had close relationships with the departments of animal husbandry, pharmacy, chemistry, botany, and physics. Requirements for admission were 18 years of age, of good moral character, and passage of a satisfactory examination on geography and history of the United States, English, grammar, and composition, reading, an extensive book list of the classics of literature, and mathematics through algebra and geometry. Transfer students had to supply certificates of honorable discharge from previous colleges. It is interesting that although Carey reinforced Brune's desire to emphasize science, he also retained significant elements of the old liberal arts core curriculum. Carey himself was multilingual and continued to follow the professional literature in German and perhaps in French. The 3-year course leading to the DVM degree consisted of 3 terms per year that covered an impressive array of subject matter ranging from physics, chemistry, botany, pharmacy, and livestock management to all the basic and clinical sciences taught in a modern curriculum today. In addition, a thesis was required in all 3 terms of the last year. Suffice it to say, the graduate was deserving of a professional degree. 19 students were registered in 1907, increasing to 51 by 1909, at which time 5 qualified for their degrees. These numbers continued to rise to 74 registrants and 23 graduates in 1916. These numbers were interrupted by World War I, and the student population experienced a sharp decline which extended through into the next decade. This could be attributed to several factors incident to the war. An infestation of boll weevils from Mexico swept across the South early in the 20th century. A virtual embargo was imposed on southern cattle due to tick fever. A large segment of available labor moved north to work in factories, and the reliance on the horse and mule for draft and transportation was being replaced by the use of steam and gasoline-powered internal combustion engines. A farmer's depression hit in the South in the 1920s before the Great Depression enveloped the country in the 30s. It was 1932 before student numbers regained their pre-war strength, and of course by then the Great Depression had to be dealt with. In less than another decade, World War II arrived. At the cessation of hostilities in 1945, veterans returning to school under the GI Bill accounted for a sharp rebound in numbers of students, with students matriculating from as far away as New England. By the time the Southern Regional Education Board was established in 1948, which incidentally was the brainchild of Dean Redding Sugg, Dean from 1940 to 1958, Auburn was providing contract spaces for students from a 9-state area of the Southeast, and at one time boasted of an annual enrollment of nearly 500 students. Proceeding apace with the growth of the young school during these uncertain times were aggressive programs to eradicate tick fever, tuberculosis, hog cholera, and rabies. These consumed the energies and perennially outstripped the resources of the college, the state association, and the office of the state veterinarian. However, they persevered, and by 1935, the BAI and the USDA certified that tuberculosis in Alabama cattle had been reduced to less than 0.5%, but less than 0.05%. Tick fever was under control and all but eradicated. A program of brucellosis eradication had begun the year before, and programs of rabies vaccination in dogs and of hog cholera prevention in cattle were in progress. It was also during these years that two of Dean Carey's stalwart faculty emerged as leaders of the profession. In 1908, Isaac Sadler McAdory graduated from McKillop's Veterinary College in Chicago, and shortly thereafter joined Carey as professor of anatomy and physiology. In 1915, Redding Stansel Sugg graduated from API, and in 1919, after serving in the Veterinary Corps during World War I, joined the faculty at Auburn as professor of bacteriology. Both men were integral in the development of the state's livestock industry, as well as the young school to which they dedicated their lives. Upon Dean Carey's death in 1935, Dr. McAdory was appointed dean and served from 35 to 40. Dean Sugg succeeded Dean McAdory, and with the exception of a 3-year interruption between 1942 and 1945 for his second period of service in the Veterinary Corps during World War II. He occupied the deanship until his death in office in 1958. During the interim period from 42 to 45, Dr. Everett Winters, head of the Department of Physiology and Pharmacology, served as dean. Graduating under Dean Carey in 1933, Dr. James Etheridge Greene joined the Faculty of Small Animal Medicine and Surgery in 1937. After 4 years of military service in World War II, he returned as professor and head of the department until he succeeded Dean Sugg in 1958. Dean Greene served with distinction until his retirement in 1977. He was in turn succeeded by yours truly, who served until his retirement in 1995. The current dean, Timothy R. Businger of Purdue 1976, is completing his 15th year at the college's helm, following a period of impressive growth that saw construction of new facilities for the isolation of contagious diseases, the Linear Accelerator Laboratory, the Southeastern Raptor Center, the Large Animal Teaching Hospital, the Alabama State Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, and many other improvements. It may be said that the institution's stability throughout periods of national conflict, economic reversals, and sea changes in science and technology is a reflection of the fact that it has experienced only 6 changes of leadership in over 100 years. Listing the accomplishments of each of the administrations and of the faculties and their graduates worldwide is the assignment of future histories. Today, the College of Veterinary Medicine at Auburn University is one of 32 schools and colleges remaining, 28 in the United States, of 63 that had been started in North America since 1862. Between 1852 and 1938, 41 independent schools were opened. By the turn of the 20th century, 20 were closed, merged, or suspended. 14 more were added to the list by the end of World War I, that is in 1920. 6 more by the Great Depression in 1933, and the last one by the end of World War II in 1947. That Auburn's veterinary curriculum has continued without interruption for 118 years as of this year, and 103 years as a freestanding college is due to the strong foundation on which it was established and the unstinting efforts of 5 generations of loyal supporters from all ranks of society, of academia, of government, industry, and the military. For a profession that had languished in the shadow of European science for the first 350 years of its existence in the New World, to have emerged to its current stature in the 20th century is the finest tribute that can be paid to these dedicated men and women who have gone before, and the sternest challenge that can be made to those who follow after. Perhaps Goethe, 1749 to 1832, said it best: "What you have as heritage, take now as task, for thus you make it your own."